Legislature in Guam is called to order. I would like to ask Senator Yamashita if you can lead us in prayer.
I'd be honored to, Madam Speaker. In the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit, amen. Dear Lord, as we start 2012, let us refresh our minds and our souls about why we all asked to be the people's representative. Let us remind ourselves and each other that we are here to think, to share, to prod, to challenge, and then to come together in making the best policy decisions so that every single one of our island community members have the opportunity to thrive. We ask for your blessings in working well together in the spirit of collaboration for the best for all of our people. In this we ask, amen.
Jesus Mas is Senator. Senator Munya Barnes, if you can lead us in the recitation of the Anniversary.
Speaker, ginin mastakulu gi sinaku, I mastakulum gi corazonhu, zani masfigu ni sanahu, hu fresin maisaju para baihu protehi, zanu defendi, I nengi, I cultura, I linguaje, I airi, zani hanum, I tanutamo. Ni rashaku diretu gina azu stata. Esti hua fitma gihilu I Biblia, zani bendarau I benderan guahan.
Senator Montessilvio, can you please lead us in the Guam hymn, and Senator Tom Ada in the national anthem. Thank you very much. I would like to ask the clerk if you can please take roll call.
Senator Tom Ada. Senator Tony Ada. Good morning, President. Senator Frank Blas. Vice Speaker B.J. Cruz, Senator Chris Dueñas, Senator Judy Gutherts, Senator Sam Mabini, Senator Tina Munya Barnes, Senator Adolfo Palacios, Senator Ben Pangilinan, Senator Rory Respicio, Senator Dennis Rodriguez, Senator Mana Silva Tyron, Speaker Wampa,
Present.
Senator Eileen Yamashita. Madam Speaker, with the report, there is a quorum.
Thank you very much. I'd like to recognize the Majority Leader, Senator Respicio.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that we excuse Senator Pangilinan, Speaker Pangilinan, our Minority Leader Frank Blas Jr., and Senator Dennis Rodriguez.
Thank you very much. On that motion, without any objection, so ordered. For the Legislative Journal, Senator Respicio, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I move that we approve the Legislative Journal dated 12/19/11 to 12/22/11, subject to correction.
On that motion, no objection, so ordered. Thank you.
Madam Speaker, there are communications and petitions, and I move that they be appended to today's session journal.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, there are also messages from Imagalahin Guahan, and I move for the same.
On that motion, without any objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. There are reports of standing committees, and I move that they also be appended to today's session journal.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, there are no reports of select committees, so under item 12, I move that bill numbers 403-31 to 410-31 be given its first reading,
On that motion, without any objection, so ordered.
as well as resolution 294-31 COR to resolution number 302-31 COR be given
No
its first reading.
objections, so ordered.
And finally, certificate number 114-31 be also given its first reading.
Hearing no objections, so ordered.
Madam Speaker, under
motions?
motions, we
Yes, Senator.
we have a request from Senator Mana Silva Tyrone, and I move that her resolution 281-31, which was publicly heard by her, be placed at the bottom of the second reading file, and I could read the title.
Can you repeat the number again?
It's resolution 281-31, and copies are being made and being distributed, and it's relative to expressing the support of Legislature Guahan for and recognizing the importance of the service of military reservists serving on Guam by urging President Barack Obama and the 112th United States Congress to reconsider funding cuts to the budget of the Department of Defense in accordance with the provisions of the Budget Control Act of 2011, and further encouraging the Department of Defense to reconsider any funding decrease to reserve military forces on Guam resulting from deficit reduction provisions of the Budget Control Act of 2011.
On that motion, without any objection, so ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. My first motion is customary, and it's any resolution or certificate of condolence or commendatory nature be automatically adopted by this body while we're in this session, and that all senators be co-sponsors, and that the sponsor and work with the legal counsel and the clerk for the finalization of these certificates.
That motion, without any objection, so ordered.
My other motion, Madam Speaker, is customary, and it allows us to continue to be expedient. And so we have adopted the second reading file, now 17 agenda items. If in the event the sponsor still needs more time, or a committee report is still pending to be filed in the case of a couple bills, I move that these bills or resolutions be set aside. They do not lose their place in the order that's listed here, and that as soon as the sponsor advises you that he or she is ready, you would take that up as the next item of business.
On that motion, no objection, so ordered.
And under legislative concurrence from your Committee on Education and Public Libraries on the appointment of Dr. John Camacho Salas to serve as a member of the Council on Post-Secondary Institution Certification, with your committee's recommendation to confirm, I move that this be placed in the voting file.
Hearing no objection, so ordered.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator Respicio. We are then on the second reading file, and I'd like to recognize Senator Tony Ada on substitute bill number 99-31.
Good morning, Madam Speaker. Thank you. Madam Speaker, I'd like to make a motion to move substituted Bill 9931 to the third reading file. I'd like to speak on it briefly.
Please proceed.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, Bill 9931, as substituted by the Committee on Public Safety, Law Enforcement, and Judiciary, is an act to add a new Article 3 to Chapter 120 of 8 GCA relative to requiring convicted sex offenders, inter alios, to submit to DNA profiling. And Madam Speaker, this will make changes to Guam's law relative to DNA profiling that all 50 states and the District of Columbia already do. Enactment of this bill will require sex offenders, convicted sex offenders, and those who commit other crimes in attempt to commit sexual assault, such as kidnapping or domestic violence, to submit to DNA testing. And we know that sex crimes have a very high rate of recidivism. And even with counseling, medical procedures, psychological, psychiatric treatment, and sometimes rehabilitation, national stats reveal that unless strict monitoring is adhered to, the sex offender will likely reoffend. And if not here on Guam, somewhere else in the country. All 50 states require convicted sex offenders to submit to DNA testing. And not only that, but some states require violent crime offenders and felons to also submit to DNA testing. The current DNA database maintained by the FBI, known as the Combined DNA Index System, which is CODIS, contains case samples, DNA samples from crime scenes or from rape kits that are compared automatically by the system software as a new sample is entered. And as of 2007, February 2007, CODIS had produced over 45,400 hits, which assisted in more than 46,300 investigations. Now, this has really helped investigators to come back in their investigations and ensure that, those are guilty are prosecuted. Madam Speaker, Senator Palacios' committee had held a productive markup meeting with our staffs and also with the Chief Prosecutor, Basil Mallon. And this final version of the bill will go a long way in helping victims of sex crimes to obtain justice. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Senator Tonieta. On the main motion, Senator Palacios, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Bill 99. Bill 99, Madam Speaker, will enhance, of course, our criminal justice systems. We have to take full advantage of the technologies that we now have to protect our people. DNA profiling and the use of DNA, I understand, Madam Speaker, based on research and the experience of other jurisdictions, it's much easier to obtain, more simple to analyze, and it's as accurate, if not more accurate, than fingerprinting, and it's readily available. It would aid, of course, in the expeditious identification of either a perpetrator or people who are innocent. So if we have this in store, and then we obtain a DNA, we can always match that against suspects, either to eliminate them or to identify them. Again, the time to submit, of course, the DNA would be probably at the time of conviction. And this, again, would enhance, of course, the prosecution and the services for the people of Guam. I rise in support of Bill 99, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Situas Masi, Senator Palacios, is there anyone else wishing to speak on Bill 99? Anyone? If not, Senator Ada, would you like to close or put down? To move to the, okay. Bill 99 is moved to the voting file with no objections. Next on the agenda, we have Bill number 124-31LS. Speaker Wampat, I recognize you. Good morning.
Good morning, Speaker. Madam Speaker, I would like to make a motion to place Bill 124-31LS as substituted by the Committee on Public Safety, Law Enforcement, and Judiciary in the third reading file, and I would like to speak on it briefly.
Please proceed, Speaker Wampat.
Thank you very much again, Madam Speaker, for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, the primary purpose of introducing this bill, and you should have a substituted version because there's been a change to the title, but the purpose then is to really have, of having this in the website, is to identify and eventually lead to the apprehension of parents who have chosen not to fulfill their obligations in supporting their children. Parents then who fail to take financial responsibility for their children place a heavy burden on the custodial parent or guardian, the government agencies, and the taxpayers. Therefore, this website would help the Office of the Attorney General in helping to locate individuals named on this list. Months after this bill was introduced, the Office of the Attorney General then published in the local papers a list of delinquent parents. So during the public hearing for this bill, it stated that it cost about $24,000 to publish a paper of mass circulation, and about half that for a different paper. This once-a-year publication is indeed helpful, but to have the list online on a daily basis with links from each Government of Guam website will expedite the apprehension of parents who choose not to fulfill their obligations to support their children. I'd like to now walk, of course, our colleagues here throughout the bill because, and I thank one of the Deputy Attorney General who came to testify, and she's, with the Family Division, and basically wanted to make sure that the language of deadbeat actually be changed to more of a delinquent parent or a delinquent absent parent, and hence, of course, the chairman of the committee had actually moved forward to make that substitution in the bill. There are several other changes that were made that I think are really very important, is that the timelines in which, of course, the disclosure must be made has been reduced from 45 to 30 days, rather than doing a certified address, because sometimes you will not be able to find that, and we don't want to waste our monies, is that it would go through a first-class mailing. There would be the Attorney General and his or her designation. A designee then would determine the criteria for the publication in terms of the identification and information of the individuals who would fall under the most wanted delinquent absent parent. And several of those things would be inclusive, such as the irregularity of voluntary tribunal ordered payment made by the obligor under the support order. The other would be the total amount of voluntary child support payments owed and the total length of delinquency for voluntary child support payment. Earlier, I know you see the other bill, of course, was much longer, but these were the recommendations of the Attorney General's office, which would be able then to, one is make sure that we do provide some information that would not go against or be in violation of any confidentiality laws, and hence, of course, the three different criteria. The Attorney General also may create a poster and or furnish, again, a list to the newspaper if they choose to, aside from the website. And as I stated earlier, the cost to print, of course, would be $24,000 and half that with another. But then by actually placing it on the website, this list will remain there every day and will be updated, and everyone throughout the government would actually know these individuals and you know very well what really works in any community or any organization will be, peer pressure, and the fact that when your name is listed, whether it's a website or a newspaper, anywhere, that would, of course, hasten you trying to take care of that matter. So I asked then my colleagues that, if you support and agree that that parents have this responsibility. If they've chosen to bring a child in this world, they must take on and know the responsibility also of not just the social support, the physical support, but even the financial support of these children. And it is very difficult, of course, and we place a very heavy burden on the custodial parent or the guardian. And we all know that if there aren't any, the government steps in, and ultimately it will be all of the taxpayers. So I thank the chairman on Public Safety, Law Enforcement, and Judiciary for holding the public hearing and preparing the committee report, and I ask my colleagues to support this bill. And if you have any questions, of course, I'd be more than happy to answer them for you. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're very welcome, Speaker Wampat. On the main motion, I recognize Senator Adolfo Palacios.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise in support of Bill 124. In summary, there are several advantages to this. First, it would enhance, of course, in the relocating or identifying, of course, long absent parents. It will enhance the collection of child support for the child. It will update records of support and obligations. There are times, Madam Speaker, and records have shown that people sometimes they satisfy their obligation either to payment or to the what you call it, the emancipation of the child having been adopted or having reached adult age. And so by publishing this, sometimes it brings to light that there are records that need to be updated, that these things have already been settled. So that's another thing that can come about. The AG, Madam Speaker, currently publishes delinquent child support obligators or absent parents, and this is consistent with federal child support guidelines. The policy we have before us, Madam Speaker, have gone through tests. It's been tested, it's been refined, and it is, like I said, it is in support and consistent with the federal child support guideline. Currently is the practice in many jurisdictions. Ultimately, Madam Speaker, the bill is all about enhancing the support for the child. A child is born into this world. A parent has the obligation to support that child. The government stands in the absence of the parent if they are not able. But if they are able, they have to be found and they have to be held to their obligation and raise that child. That's what it's all about. And by putting this in statute, as I said earlier, it's currently practiced. This would then permanentize it, and only this body can amend and make changes as we go. But the bill before us will codify the current practice, and from there we can make adjustments. And I rise in support of Bill 124, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
Buen provecho, Senator Palacios. Anyone else wishing to speak? Senator Tony Ada, you're recognized on Bill 124.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, if the author would yield to a question.
Speaker Wampat, would you like to yield? Go ahead and state your
Yes,
question,
Madam Speaker.
Senator Ada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, we know that previously when the AGs came out with the list in the newspaper, that sometimes names were listed erroneously. So what kind of protections or safeguards are in this to ensure that, especially when you have a name of a parent that's in there, and their kids read the paper or what, and they see that their parent is on the most wanted delinquent absent parent list. What kind of safeguards do we have there to ensure that the names that are actually on this list would be those that are actually owing arrears child support or delinquent child support?
Thank you, Senator Ada. Speaker Wampat?
I would try to answer for the Attorney General, but my understanding is that the whole purpose, of course, for this is that some of these, when they say absent, that they truly are absent, and that sometimes it's difficult for them to, one is to find them, And the other, of course, is to be able to have a physical address for them. And then there are those who, yes, may have fulfilled their obligations, which of course the AG needs to be able to update it. And as the previous speaker and the chairman of the committee had basically said, that what this would do is that it would update our list so that we don't erroneously or embarrass, I guess, anyone by publishing their names. It's a lot more embarrassing. I know they were saying that with placing it on the newspaper versus on the website, because on the website it will be easy to go in and change them as these updates are being made. They're saying that there's a shortage. That's always the argument, a shortage of staff to follow through. So, I mean, Senator, I wish I could say that, they do have the support to continually on a daily basis follow through, call these parents to make sure that they are up to date, or that they have been or they have completed their obligations. But other than us forcing the Attorney General's office to somehow publish these names so that the individuals will come out as the most that the legislature can mandate. I'm hoping that the Attorney General's office will be able to set up a system, and that's why they had said that if you look at the list, the earlier bill basically had a long list of things that to include in the publication of the individual's background, and they have made the recommendation to remove some of this or amend some of these so that they would also be able to stay within and protecting, of course, some confidential information about the individual or the parent. That's the best I can do. I'm sorry, Senator.
Senator Atta, you okay with that?
Yeah, just a follow-up to it, that, it should, in the event that a name is published and that parent is not a deadbeat parent, would there be any, like the AG's office coming out to publicly apologize to these people, to where they would exonerate them and say, we embarrassed them in the first place. So is there something that we just want to make sure that if they're placed in there and it was an error on their part, that they'll be able to go back in or publicly apologize to these parents? I think it's, if we do the crime, we do the time, but I think at the same token, we need to be responsible and not just place. We need to make sure that when we start listing people for publication, whether on our websites or in our newspapers, that the information is accurate and it's true. And if it's not, that we will publicly apologize for it.
Senator Atta, are you posing
Thank
that
you.
as an inquiry back to the author?
Yeah, just as
Yeah.
as
Well, I
Speaker
like to,
Wampat?
as I was rereading again the bill, and on page 2, hopefully this would help then, and I'm just, if they're going to be due diligence in terms of their responsibility on line 16, where it says that 30 days prior then to them actually disclosing. So maybe the thing for them to do is that, kind of put out some kind of an announcement, general announcement to the parents that those absent parents who have not fulfilled their obligations, come in, meet us, talk to us, update your information before we actually print your name. So, so 30 days then before doing that, those parents who are in arrears, those parents who maybe need to go to court to either change the dollar amount, whatever the case may be, for them to contest, the information that's there, that they have an opportunity then to do that prior to then the publication of their names on either a website or a newspaper. So I'm hoping then, unless we want to say something here that even that maybe even prior to this disclosure, that a general type of information be put out, a call to all of these absent parents to give them forewarning that in 30 days, if you do not come in, then of course, so maybe that's something that if the
Senator
the
Ada.
senator would like to have a brief
Thank you, Speaker Wampat.
recess to discuss that with him further.
Would you like a
Either
minute
way.
recess? We're in a minute recess. Session, Senator Tony Atta, you still had the floor.
Yes, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I spoke with the author and we came to an agreement that on page 2, line 16, I'd like to make amendment to delete 30 days and make it 45 days. So in that way, it gives everyone time to come back and say, you know, they have time to recheck their listing, they have time to send out advance notices to these parents, so that once that time period is up, then those names that they come down with will be able to be published, and those will be the list for the deadbeat parents.
Thank you, Senator Hatta. On the motion to change line 16 on page 2, sub-item C, from 30 days back to 45.
Yes,
on the
Madam Speaker.
motion, are there any objections? No objections. Motion carries. Senator Atta, are you done now?
Yes, Madam Speaker. Thank you.
You're very welcome. On the main motion of 124, are there anyone else wishing to speak? If not, Senator Mana?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I don't want to delay the discussion on the bill, but I do want to express my full support of this. Anyone who's been a single parent knows how difficult in this day and age it is to raise a child on your own. And so this child support issue, child support isn't so that the child can support the parent, it's so that the parent can support the child. And this body has shown numerous times that we are about protecting the unborn child, and this bill shows that we're also about protecting and caring for the children that are born. So I rise in full support, and I find it so shameful that we have to create a list to shame people into living up to their obligations to their children. If they can bring a child into the world, then they better step up to the plate and do what's right. So thank you, Madam Speaker, and I commend the author for this. Thank you.
Si Diyos Masi, Senator Tyrone. Anyone else wishing to speak on Bill 124? If not, Speaker Wonpat, would you like to close? On the motion to put Bill 124-31 LS into third reading voting file without an objection, motion carries. Now we are up on Bill number 193-31 COR. Senator Chris Duenas, you're recognized.
Si Diyos Masi, Madam Speaker. Buenos dias, and manana si Diyos talo. Malagozu tapega esti na prinaponi 193-31. Gi mina tres na tinaitay. Malagozu loko ita diskuti esti na prinaponi. Si Diyos Masi, Madam Speaker.
Please proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I would like to place once again, Gifino English, 193-31 to the third reading file, and I'd also like to discuss it, the merits of the bill. Madam Speaker, thank you very much once again for this opportunity. Madam Speaker, this Bill 193 is the completion of two other companion bills that were introduced in this legislature and passed unanimously by this body. And I would like to take this opportunity once again to thank members of this body for their continued support with regard to workforce development and post-secondary education for our most needy individuals in our community, Madam Speaker. As the title indicates in this legislation, and actually in the discussion and the opening remarks of this legislation, it talks about those in our community that need the help the most. I hearken back to the days at Department of Youth Affairs, Madam Speaker, once again, and of all the bills we passed with regard to this scholarships for post-secondary education, it is this bill that I remember in terms of looking at the results of the reduction of juvenile delinquency. It was issues that are contained and opportunities that are contained in this bill that actually had the greatest effect on ensuring that our youth would get back on the right track and have an opportunity to seek a better opportunity for their lives to become productive members of our community. And so, Madam Speaker, I'm very happy that this bill has made it to this session floor and that we can bring to a close all opportunities for workforce development and post-secondary education, this one specifically to the trades. Madam Speaker, I would like to take this opportunity to say that in probably just a few short weeks, with your help and the help of this body and the legislation that we passed for UOG, that the rules and regulations, from what I understand from the faculty at the university, are almost complete, and they want to bring them back to this body to discuss it. And also there are a number of businesses who have approached me and our office that are interested in taking advantage of the tax advantages of setting up the scholarships at UOG and GCC. So already, Madam Speaker, we're getting traction in that area, and I'm very excited about it, and I'm sure this particular bill, particularly with the Trades Academy, would do that as well. Madam Speaker, contained in the bill are a number of organizations and entities of the government of Guam that will participate in shaping the scholarship recipients and setting out the criteria for the scholarship recipients in more detail. One of them, of course, once again, most dear to my heart and many members in this legislature, the Department of Youth Affairs. Over the years, Madam Speaker, a lot of things have changed at DYA, particularly in the area of drug court, juvenile drug court. Madam Speaker, there are young people at Department of Youth Affairs sometimes that are held up to age 21 for the purposes of trying to wean them off of dependency, but due to multiple violations, sometimes these youth find themselves in a revolving door in and out of Department of Youth Affairs. You may ask, what does that have to do with this bill? Well, Madam Speaker, because in order to participate in the programs at the Trades Academy and even some GCC programs, you need to be an adult. The ages between 18 and 21, of course, are adulthood. The vision of this bill and opportunities in this bill are something that was realized with a couple of clients when I was at the Department of Youth Affairs, and that was alternative sentencing. The judges found that when they were frustrated and they were having a tough time with some of these kids, and all they were trying to do was set them on the right path, that simply by enrolling them and allowing them to participate in programs that will give them an opportunity to get a skill, a trade, a life skill, Madam Speaker, even if it doesn't become their career, something that saves them money on fixing their car or building an extension on their house or building a doghouse for that matter. Something that will give them a life skill and perhaps be their trade and eventually something they master and go on to GCC and really have gainful employment for the rest of their life, Madam Speaker. In closing, Madam Speaker, I would just like to say that we hear a lot and we've talked a lot in the community now about this build-up, on, off, build-up, no build-up. At the end of the day, Madam Speaker, in my opinion, in making Guam's workforce the best that it can be, to entice investment, to provide opportunity for our people, should never be dependent on a build-up or anybody's ideas for Guam except our ideas. And that's what this legislation does, Madam Speaker. We take control of it. We make a law locally that says we control the conditions under which we can invest in our people, allow our businesses to invest in our people, invest in our most needy people to bring about change for our island and economic opportunities for our people and our businesses that are here and operating on Guam now. So, Madam Speaker, in final closing, because of the amount of work that was put into this behind the scenes, not only at the committee level, but I would like to add Senator Tom Atta as the number 2 and Senator Rory Respicio as number 3 on this bill as in his committee, and with Senator Tom Atta's work, it was through that maybe this is a final product, maybe not, but I know that a lot of work has already gone into it, and I want to recognize those 2 senators who really helped along with getting this bill to the floor in its current edition. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Si Diyos masi para esta oportunidad. Sa ugagaw lokui isuportin midu todo este member shagi 31st Guam Legislature para esta na perneponi. Si Diyos masi.
On the motion then to place Senator Tom Atta and Senator Respicio as co-sponsors without any objection, so ordered. Is there anyone? I recognize Senator Yamashita on the motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, for allowing me the opportunity to comment on Bill number 193-31, of which I stand in full support. This is another step that this body can take in making sure there's full opportunity for all of our people. I am wondering, and perhaps the author will yield to this question, and the question is, in the selection committee, we have all of our agencies
One moment,
listed.
Senator, because I think the author stepped out for a moment. Can somebody please call Senator Duenas in? Oh, there he is. Question for you, Senator. You may proceed.
Thank you. In the selection committee on page 2, we have highlighted, or we have identified our government of Guam agencies. The question I have is with the idea, with this whole paradigm shift of ensuring that we have partnerships with our community and our private organizations, I'm wondering if the author would consider amending to include perhaps the executive director of the Contractors Association, or whomever he thinks can best represent the private sector part of this. Certainly, I know that private sector participation has already been considered, because on page 4, when we talk about funding sources possibilities, we talk about companies who might or who could donate to a qualified tuition program. So I'm thinking, if we're asking them to help realize this opportunity, that perhaps they could also be a part of the selection committee.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
I certainly do, Madam Speaker, and I thank my good colleague from Tamuning for the question. As another good colleague of ours, Senator Sam Mabini will know, as her membership on Department of Labor's Workforce Investment Board, community partners such as the Guam Trades Academy and others, Contractor Association, are a member of that board and directly work under the umbrella of labor on that board. But I'm certainly open to it, and I agree. Maybe we should just make sure it's in this legislation so that it's clear and distinct that they will be a participant. In fact, maybe Senator Mabini could add to that if maybe that what we do here is ensure that if we say Workforce Investment Board, then we know already that those community partners are part of it. But if we explicitly want to say Guam Contractors, that's fine with me, and it makes sense.
We're going to take a brief recess.
Thank you.
Legislature's back in session. As Senator Yamashita, you still have the floor.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker, and thank you for that brief recess to discuss this. My concern was, or my issue was ensuring that the private sector is represented in the selection committee, and that has been talked out, and now I do understand now that Senator Mabini is going to move a motion to address that issue. So thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome. Senator Mabini, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In reference to the issue of, or the concern of making sure that we include people from our private sector, I'd like us to consider, or to make a motion to consider having the Guam Workforce Investment Board be placed on this selection committee to be able to cover actually 3 of the representations here. So it would, because currently, on the Guam Workforce Investment Board, we have the director of the Guam Housing and Urban Renewal Authority sitting there. We also have the director of the Public Health and Social Services sitting there, and of course the HRD and Department of Labor director. So perhaps what we could do is collapse those representation under the umbrella of the Guam Workforce Investment Board. Currently, the chair of the Guam Workforce Investment Board is the president of the Guam Contractors Association. And so, but that's no guarantee that he'll always be the chair. But currently, as it stands, there's that representation. Perhaps the media, the way to meet the concerns of including the private sector is, one, striking out the number 1 and 2 and 4, and pull that all under one umbrella, the Guam Workforce Investment Board, and then add another number, which would be the a representative from the Guam Trades Academy, or excuse me, the Guam Chamber of Commerce and or the Guam Contractors Association. And that would come down to, we have the...
Okay, let's do one thing at a time.
Sure.
Okay, the first amendment I'm hearing is that to delete, in page 2, to delete lines 10 to 13, which
That's
is
correct.
subsection 1 and 2, and also delete lines 15 and 16.
That's correct.
Okay, so on that motion then, without any objections, so ordered. Now, your second is that you wanted to add a new, to make an addition, and we'll just have a legal counsel then renumber this
That's correct.
accordingly. So just tell us then what it is specifically then you want to place now. You said 2, one or the other or both, I'm not sure. Chamber of Commerce or Chamber of Commerce and the Guam Contractors Association.
Right, and the reason why I also included the Guam Chamber is, although this bill is kind of geared towards specific trades, they're also involved in business that are peripherally associated with the Guam contractors, or any work that's dealing with construction or whatnot. So perhaps including that as an and or.
Okay, so your new, your amendment now is to add and to have legal counsel renumbers to add the Guam Chamber of Commerce, a representative,
Yes.
right? Representative from the Guam Chamber of Commerce. That's
correct.
one. And you're going to do another, and the other would be to also a representative from
The Guam
the
contractors.
Guam Contractors Association.
That's right.
Okay, so does everyone understand that? That now there's 2 were taken out, and 3 were taken out, and the 2 new ones are a representative from the Guam Chamber of Commerce and a representative from the Guam Contractors Association. Any objections? No objections? So ordered. Senator, I would need for you to clarify specifically the language where you wanted to reference the Guam Workforce Investment Board. Is that what you're?
That's correct.
Where is that being put?
Well, currently we have, since we eliminated lines 10 to 13, if we move number 1, the director of DYA as number 1, and since we left Department of Labor as number 2, then number 3 would be the Guam Workforce Investment Board, and then 4 and 5 would be the separate chamber and contractors.
Okay, so then there is another amendment then, is to add the Guam, a representative from the Guam Workforce Investment Board.
That's
Okay,
correct.
on that
Yes, ma'am.
amendment, no objections, so ordered. So what this would do, and legal counsel then will renumber, is to make sure then that the members now are, one, the director, or I said you can keep it as, well, for now, the director of DYA, the director of the Department of Labor. We're going to have the Guam Workforce Investment Board, the
Yes.
Guam Chamber of Commerce, and one from the Guam Contractors Association, making 5 again.
That's correct.
All right, so does everyone understand that? And legal counsel, more importantly, and the clerks, and we will make sure we get this in writing.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You okay? All right, so now the language, change, unless Senator Duenas, you're going to do that rather than Director of Representatives? So wait, before I call you, just in case if there's anybody else who would like to speak before you close?
Sure. Oh, so we're okay, no problem.
Yes, I'll give you that opportunity. Are there anyone who would like to speak on the amendments or the main motion? None. So Senator Duenas, you are recognized then to close and to make any other amendments.
Madam Speaker, prior to closing, can we just take one recess once again, then I'll discuss with you some arrangements we want to make with the leadership of some of these organizations.
Okay. We're going to take a brief recess. the legislature is back in session. I recognize Senator Mabini.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. In reference to the previous amendment that I had submitted, I'd like to submit a change to that amendment.
want to
amendment
withdraw
the
that
amendment.
amendment first?
Yes, to withdraw.
Okay, and then you want to put in another.
That's
offer
correct.
another. Okay,
So
so,
withdraw
on the
the previous
motion then
amendment.
on the motion then to withdraw, no objections, so ordered. Thank you.
Okay.
Your new amendment.
Okay, so the new amendment would be, again, deleting lines 10 to 13, as well as deleting lines 15 to 16. And so the order of the selection committee for this bill would be, number one, we would be moving up the director of Department of Youth Affairs or his designee. Number two, the director of the Department of Labor or his designee. And number three, the Guam Workforce Investment Board.
Okay, very clean. All right, everybody understand then? So now the new amendment is number one, the Director of the Department of Youth Affairs, number two, the Director of the Department of Labor, and number three, Guam Workforce Investment Board. Well, a representative. So it's a representative for all of these then for those three.
I mean, not the representative, but the Guam Workforce Investment Board, because they will deliberate along.
So all of them are going to be, you're saying, the entire board?
Yes.
How many are in that board?
It's a good number, but what would happen is that within the board, we would be, they would make an appointment.
Oh, okay,
Yes.
they would appoint. Oh, okay. So on the new amendment, no objections? First of all, legal counsel, were you able to get that information? And clerks? And you would put that in writing?
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you. So on the amendment, without any objections, ordered.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. Is there anyone who would like to speak then on the main motion? There being none, Senator Duenas, and to close.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and thank you to all my colleagues who made this a better bill, much cleaner selection committee. And as the retiring speaker, Senator Mabini, said, in our experience and other members of this body with the Workforce Investment Board, they have subcommittees. And so what they would do in this instance is select an individual to be on this selection committee. So it's very clean. It's very clear in terms of that. So I just want to say once again, thank you to all of my colleagues, and I appreciate the opportunity to close. And I once again ask for help and support on this bill. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
So the motion to place Bill 193-31 to the third reading file without any objections, so ordered. I now recognize Senator Yamashita on substitute bill number 263-31.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I ask that Bill number 263-31, as amended by the Committee on Appropriations, Taxations, Public Debt, Banking, Insurance, Retirement, and Land be placed on the third reading file, and I ask an opportunity to discuss it briefly.
You may proceed.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, all of us who believe in our island, who live here, who uphold our island, know that we are a land of very good people. We also know, for those of us who work here and live here, we are also a land of cars. We have countless cars and trucks. And in 2011, there were actually 109,842 registered vehicles on our island, and we have 159,358 people. There's a lot of cars and trucks, and that number has gone up by 10,000, while our population has only gone up by about 4,000. Madam Speaker, I introduced this bill because of the phone calls that I got from folks who continue to work, travel, go to the stores, go to where they worship. They go to different places and they park their car. And they park their car in between the yellow lines, but then they can't get out of their cars. And so we started researching and studying it, and we had a public hearing. At that public hearing, the Director of Public Works testified in full support of this bill, as did the representation of the Department of Land Management. We have current statutes, and what we are asking is that we amend Section 61103. All of this that talks about parking regulations. And essentially what it will do is it will widen the amount of the width that we would need to have so we can park our cars. We would go from 8.5 feet across to 9.5 feet. Originally, I had proffered that we get rid of all compact size parking spaces, and after the conversation, the committee had said that we would revert to say that 75% of the parking slots at a business or at any establishment would be for standard size automobiles, and 25% would be for the smaller cars. Madam Speaker, this bill is offered to help protect our cars. I think that it is right that we are allowed to buy cars. Many of us have trucks, but we park it, and then the next person next to us, when they open their door, dings our cars. And so our property is being hurt. With a little more space, perhaps we can protect our investments. But further than that, and bigger than that, is the fact that many of our people have a hard time getting out of their cars with their walkers and with their canes. And our growing population has a more difficult time in maneuvering how they get out. Now, we know that about 10% of our people are those with disabilities, and not everybody is in a walker, of course, and not everybody is in a wheelchair. And I know that people have said, well, we have designated slots for those with people with disabilities, but many of our people choose not to get the blue placard and choose not to park in those slots. And we also know that those number of slots are limited at different establishments. So, Madam Speaker, what this bill simply does is that it requires establishments to provide greater number of wider parking slots at all of our places. And the Attorney General was present during our public hearing, and he requested, and it has now been reflected in this bill in front of us, that we be given a year so the Department of Land Management can come together with those other stakeholders and come up with the rules and regulations about how this is going to be addressed and how it will be phased in, and that there will be a year for everybody to come up to speed to meeting the requirements of this law, if it so becomes a law, and that if indeed an establishment does not come into compliance after land management evaluates the establishments, the Department of Public Works will revoke occupancy permits until they comply, so that there's teeth to this. There's not going to be a choice, but we are saying that land management, who manages our land, will say this is how it's going to work. We'll have a year to phase it in, and then after that phase in, then Public Works will go through the different businesses or the different establishments and revoke occupancy permits if they are not up to standard. So, Madam Speaker, this is a measure that will help protect our property. It'll help safeguard and help address the dignity of our people, of all people. So I ask for, of course, the typical kinds of conversation and input to make this an even better bill, and I look forward to the dialogue. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, recognize Senator Munya Barnes.
Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I have no objections to the intent of the bill. As a matter of fact, I probably will support the efforts of this bill, but I just want to ask the author, based on the version as presented, on page 2, section 2, it talks about subsection 61103 definitions, and it talks about the sub-items 1 and 2, the compact automobile and standard size automobile, and it shows that I guess the parking gross area for parking purposes would be at 120 square feet, and then the standard size would be from 160 to 180 square feet. And I just want to ask her why the provision of or less is included there, if she can enlighten me into that.
Senator, do you yield to the question?
Yes, Madam Speaker. I believe the reason why it's or less is the compact automobile slot would also take care of the motorcycles and the scooters that also park in these establishments.
Senator?
The reason why I'm saying that is because I do know that if there's a provision to add for those motorcycles or those other tinier than compact automobiles like the bicycles or the motorcycles, that there could probably be a provision put in. I don't know if I want to do an amendment right now, but I'm just saying if you're going to increase it from 160 to 180 feet and say or less, then in actuality we're not creating anything new, because that business or that vendor who needs to install that parking space can accept the fact that the requirements for the slots, as we now introduce, saying that, but you know what, we want it at this spot, but it can be or less than that. And right now, as I understand the need for safety and protecting the property of those who patronize or support the establishments or the places that they go to, the restaurants or facilities. But I think it's important because as we go in there right now, based on this, even if we add the increase of the foot, we're not. I know you talked about the teeth, but we're not designating a new point.
So maybe we delete the or less for the standard size.
Yeah.
Senators,
Can we
we're
take a
gonna
1-minute
brief
recess, Senator? Thanks.
Legislature's back in session. Senator Yamashita, you still have the floor.
I had the-
Well, yes, you're right.
Madam Speaker,
we
I
were-
did have the floor, and
Yeah.
after the brief recess, I'd like to you to work closely with with the author of the legislature, based on the information we just received
Yes,
during the
and
recess. Thank
you're
you.
right. And thank you very much for that collaboration with the author. So Senator Yamashita, I understand is that there's a resolution here?
Yes, thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Earlier, when we opened up this session, we talked about working together. We talked about the ability to think and make best policy possible. And I think what has happened with this is that. I asked that bill number 263-31 be sent back to committee so that we can further address and strengthen the intent of this bill, which is to ensure that the dignity of all of our people is safeguarded and upheld, and that our property is protected. But just as importantly, it is very clear that the members of this legislature want to ensure that all of the agencies that are involved in this, from land management to public works, are engaged, have a full understanding with our private entities, Guam Hotel Restaurant Association, that we have a full understanding of what the consequences of this will mean as we move forward to protect our property and to uphold the dignity of our people as we get in and out of our cars and trucks. So, Madam Speaker, I appreciate the opportunity to raise this. I ask that it be sent back to committee for further dialogue. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senators. On the motion then to send bill number 263 back to the committee without any objections, so ordered.
Point of order,
Senator?
Madam Speaker.
Yes, please, state your point of order.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, given that the good senator has moved her own bill back to committee, I'm sure the body will be open to addressing another bill that she may have. So as she decides what other bill she'd like to place on the agenda, we can probably go back to motions at that point. But I just wanted to offer that as a consolation to her. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Thank you, Senator. No objections, okay. We are on bill number 268, and I recognize the author, Senator Palacios.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I move that Bill 268 be placed on the third reading file for discussion purpose, and if I may provide a short brief.
Senator, you may proceed.
Madam Speaker, Bill 268 proposes to authorize the Director of the Department of Labor to secure legal services other than what is available through the Office of the Attorney General, specifically to service the need of the Department of Labor. Madam Speaker, the Department of Labor had to address several legal issues which required sometimes timely and proper coordination with the AG. The AG, of course, as it is right now, they are barely adequate to handle what's normally they handle in criminal prosecution and other civil cases. With the anticipated increase in compliance and regulatory oversight by the Department of Labor, in relations, of course, to the military build-up with the construction that's needed and people that need to do those constructions, it is really now imperative that the Department of Labor be prepared for those challenges. The bill, if you look at page 3, Madam Speaker, on line 9, page 3, and essentially that would be the added authority, if you will, to the authority of the Department of Labor right now, and that is to contract the acquisition of legal services other than the AG for purpose of addressing regulatory, compliance, and other operational legal requirements. The Department of Labor, to the greatest extent possible, shall utilize the legal services of the Office of the Attorney General unless it deems it necessary that the utilization of external legal counsel services would be more advantageous to the agency and to the benefit of the public. At cost, any cost associated with the acquisition of legal services as authorized herein shall be absorbed, of course, within the agency's local operational budget. So there's no additional appropriation, but essentially this will amount to actually maybe a mechanism to allow, of course, the Attorney General, or rather the Department of Labor Director from time to time to secure a specialized service. Madam Speaker, challenges to decisions made by DOL are actually presented by well-paid private attorney a lot of times. And with DOL having no attorney the AG probably would not be able to give the kind and amount of time that is really needed to defend the Department of Labor's decision. They are currently now before the Department of Labor, Madam Speaker, H2 cases, denial for H2 cases, H2 requests rather, that are being challenged. There are workers' compensation claims that were denied that are being challenged. And so all these things, Madam Speaker, in some way really, if we provide the Department of Labor the authority to hire, it will indirectly benefit the Attorney General in that they don't have to then be occupied with issues pertinent to the Department of Labor. There are several things that can, there are several benefits. It would, of course, enable the Department of Labor to secure labor services with expertise in labor and labor-related matters. It would enhance the Department of Labor services to the people of Guam, and it's no additional cost, and it's just the authority that they're asking. I have consulted, of course, with the Director of the Department of Labor, and during their testimony and the public hearing, of course, their support. The AG has no objection to this, although there might be probably argument that, well, this money, that these services can come from the AG. There's no additional appropriation here for one to think that maybe take that money and give it to the AG and hire a full-time, another full-time, and then turn around and just service DOL. But this is only a mechanism that they're asking if they will be able to do that from time to time. And I hope that my colleagues would support this bill, for the Department of Labor. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
On the motion, recognize Senator Duenas.
Si Dusmasi, Madam Speaker. I rise in full support of Bill 268-31. Madam Speaker, during the hearing on this bill, the Department of Labor, many of the representatives came forward, of course, to support the legislation in terms of their needs and how things are going over in their agency. But the one in particular, the one testimony in particular that I had been affected by once again in my previous job as the Director of Department of Youth Affairs was when the AmeriCorps representative came up, Ms. Ada, and presented the challenges that just that particular program has when we're talking about legal review and expenditure of federal funds. Madam Speaker, a number of agencies, to include the Department of Agriculture, Department of Youth Affairs, and others, as government entities, for many years had been recipients of AmeriCorps and other programs which are federally funded. But because a lot of times it takes more than even the first quarter of the fiscal year to get things off the ground, it would put programs in jeopardy. And many times, Madam Speaker, that was due to non-timely review of legal counsel. And so, Madam Speaker, even if whatever arrangement is made, whether this attorney worked through the Attorney General's office on contract and other issues, but concentrates on these issues because they're funded to do so within labor, or if they are contracted out for the services, it will more than pay for itself in non-loss of revenue on the big day-to-day business that the Department of Labor does, and the many things that they do in terms of reviewing the labor force regulations, implementations, and the millions of dollars that flows through that organization, Madam Speaker. So I'd like to thank the author for his vision, and also that at some point in time, government agencies with timely review once again can avail themselves of very vital services that programs such as AmeriCorps provide. At this time, a lot of nonprofit organizations are doing a great job. We had legislation like that in the former session, Madam Speaker. But this just makes sure that in case there are additional monies and additional opportunities, that contracts don't get held up, because of non-review and preparation for legal, authority and the ability that they pass the muster so that the governor can sign them. So once again, I rise in support of this bill and thank the author for his vision. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, I recognize Senator Tom Ada.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll be real brief. On page 3, on the new language that's being added, it talks there about, starting on line 12, it states there that the department, which is the Department of Labor, shall, to the greatest extent possible, utilize the legal services of the Office of the Attorney General, unless it deems it necessary. I think maybe we need to clarify the "it" on line 14. Are we talking about the Attorney General making the determination that it will be more advantageous for Department of Labor to use outside counsel, or the Department of Labor itself determining that it's to their more in their interest to go out and hire? So maybe I would just proffer the and what I would like to do is, since we're already saying that Department of Labor should use the Office of the Attorney General to the greatest extent possible, then maybe we should let the Attorney General's office be the one to say, sorry, we're overloaded, go get an outside counsel. So I would suggest then on line 14 to make the amendment to replace the word "it" and instead put in there, unless the Office of the Attorney General deems it necessary that the utilization of external legal counsel services will be more advantageous to the agency and beneficial to the public.
On that amendment, no objections, so ordered. Thank you, Senator Ada. On the motion, main motion, I recognize Senator Mabini.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I too rise in support of Bill 268-31. Having been in communication with the agency by virtue of my involvement in the Guam Workforce Investment Board, and understanding some of the challenges that they have on a regular daily basis, I feel that this bill will really help the agency move forward in addressing, the key things that they should be paying attention to, instead of waiting on the possibility of having cases be heard by the Office of the Attorney General. We know that they're inundated as well. In fact, as the previous two previous speakers had mentioned, as a previous director, this was something that was a challenge for an agency. One particular agency that I ran, that I helped administered, in order for us to have proceeded with certain projects or contracts, possible loss of federal funding up to the amount of over $2 million would have been as a result of delays in having legal counsel from the OAG review the file. So I understand the challenges that not only Department of Labor but other agencies have. In this particular case with Department of Labor, I went and asked specifically, just as an example, anecdotal stories of what are they really facing. And just very recently, they gave just a basic list of some of the things that they're facing. They have complaints from the Fair Employment Practice Office. They have ongoing OIG audits, demand letters. Of course, when petitions for H-2 applications are declined, they come up with summons. Wage and hour are overwhelmed by cases, and the people that are affected by these delays are the people that we want to be productive citizens. They need to move on. They need to work. They need to get their business going. So I believe that this bill, and I commend the author that for championing this bill, will help one particular agency directly impact the services that they need to provide to our community and get our workforce out to be productive citizens in our community. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
You're welcome, Senator. On the motion, I recognize Senator Rodriguez.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just real briefly, I rise in support of this legislation, Madam Speaker. We know that the Office of Attorney General is overburdened with a heavy workload, and so as critical as the Department of Labor is, especially now with the buildup and the increase in workers, in foreign workers, I think it's important that they have the ability to contract for legal services to help them in their operations. So I rise in full support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Respicio, you recognized on the motion.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I rise to commend the author of this legislation to want to provide this resource to the Department of Labor because given all that's been said before with the pending military buildup, but even beyond that, just the organic growth of this island requires us to utilize foreign workers, and the Department of Labor has been dinged unnecessarily time and time again for lack of compliance, despite their attempt to want to comply with all the federal and local laws that they have jurisdiction over. You know, I rise to also commend the author of the amendment that clarifies on page 3, line 14, Senator Tamata, to still give the Attorney General the opportunity to decide whether or not it can take on this additional caseload, and because the Attorney General is involved even at this point, it'll still give them an opportunity to probably enter into a memorandum of agreement with the Department of Labor to charge on an hourly basis. I was reading the committee report, and I was quite surprised to learn that when the Director of Labor reached out to the Attorney General for help, their response was, "Well, give us $105,000 and we'll provide the legal services you're requesting." But maybe the Department of Labor does not have $105,000, which we know whether it's local or federally funded, but they may have some federal funds, which one of the employees testified that they have at least at $1,800 that they could have set aside for legal services. If the Attorney General would think about an MOA to charge on an hourly basis, they can not only stop with the Department of Labor, but they can do this with every single department agency that has federal funds, so they can build their resources and their own ability to hire additional attorneys to provide these kinds of much needed services to the Department of Labor as well as other agencies. In keeping with the spirit of the amendment that was made earlier that changed it to reflect the Office of the Attorney General, I moved that on page 3, line 19, there's another word, it, and this it, I believe, is referring to the department. So my amendment will say of other funding sources the department shall so identify. So we're not stuck in an ambiguous situation where the Attorney General might say, I have to identify if you have the funds available for this outside legal counsel. So I move to change the word it on line 19 to the department.
On that motion, does everybody have that amendment? On line 19, after the word sources, you would delete it, and put the department shall so identify. Are there any objections? No objections?
Yeah.
Speaker Wampat?
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I rise in support. As a matter of fact, I put my name down to actually speak on the exact same issue, and since I'm going to speak on the amendment, you can remove my name from the list to speak on the main motion. I do support the amendment. I think it's very important, and that the legislature here actually sometimes go back to history and of previous legislatures. And Senator Respicio was actually a member of the legislature where during a budget hearing, an oversight that we were doing with the Department of Public Works, we had realized and saw that the Department of Public Works was actually hiring attorneys, private attorneys, and were paying beyond the amount of about $1 million. Former Senator Espaudan knows about that too. And we basically at that time started then to make a policy decision that in order then to, one is to prevent departments and agencies from going out and just hiring whomever they want with really no set dollar amount, and that's where the discussion actually came forward about an hourly charge for the attorneys based also on the cost from the Attorney General's office, because they were finding themselves unable to hire attorneys because they're saying now, well, I might as well go out and go to individual departments and agencies and charge an amount way beyond, of course, what the Attorney General's office is able to support. And by doing that, of course, what we're shooting ourselves in the foot here. The decision, at least the policy decision then, and to little by little try to then support the the Office of the Attorney General's office, giving them the resources that they need, hiring the additional attorneys, trying to get some attorneys with some specialty background, because like in this case, we want an attorney with a labor background. So, therefore, I think if we continue to support the AG, let them be the ones to determine, to determine if they can't do it because maybe they don't have the specialty, but that the department should be able to identify the resources. And what we're doing is we're actually then supporting our own Attorney General or the legal department of the government of Guam. So I just wanted to let of course, our colleagues know, what has happened in the past, where everybody started to go out and get their own, and then now we're trying to bring them back and start supporting the Attorney General's office, and hopefully to the point where eventually, really all these departments and agencies will be able then to secure legal services from the office of the Attorney General, and that is something we need to look at to continue to support it, so that then, we'll be able to address all these legal issues that our departments are currently faced with. So I support the amendment. I thank the mover of the amendment. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker.
Si Diyos mga si Speaker Wampat. Senator Frank Blas on the amendment. On the Respicio amendment. Are there any objections? Anyone else wishing to speak? No objections. Motion carries on the main motion. Senator Frank Blas, my brother, you're recognized.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, while I recognize and I can appreciate the concern and the issue as to why the legislation was put together, was introduced, and I support, I guess the intent of the legislation to want to move things forward and want to alleviate the bottleneck that may be occurring with regards to the need for legal services. I've got to wonder, quite honestly, where we're going to get the money to be able to do this. In the public hearing, the Director of Department of Labor did mention the fact that she had the discussions with the Office of the Attorney General with regards to the legal services that the agency needs, and that in response, the Attorney General stated that they need $105,000, and that she didn't have that kind of money in her budget. Or didn't have that kind of money to be able to move around within her budget. So, I don't see, and I'm a little bit concerned with regards to how we're going to be able to resolve this issue when initially you've got the Office of Attorney General tasked to be able to provide the legal services. The department can't provide the funding necessary for them to continue the services, yet now we're going to give them the authority, the authorization to go ahead and hire on an as-needed basis a law firm or an attorney to be able to do that work that now the Office of Attorney General deems that it's probably more prudent and more necessary for that law firm or for that attorney to do this. So while I recognize that there is this bottleneck that occurs, that there is this need for legal counsel to move a lot of these issues forward, it still doesn't address the fact that they can't find and they don't have the money necessary to be able to already take care of, for lack of a better term, the contractual agreements they already have with the Office of Attorney General, and now giving them the authorization to be able to go higher. Where's that money going to come from? It does state in the bill that the money is going to come from the operational budget, but it goes back to my concern with regards to where is this going to come from. I think that, and I recognize some of the concerns with regards to hiring, just outright hiring law firms, and as far and worried about the cost that they can charge, and as far as their legal fees or their hourly rates and stuff. I'm just wondering, and maybe I can pose this question to the author of the legislation, the sponsor of the legislation. Has there been a consideration with regards to giving them the authority to be able, maybe to look at hiring in-house legal counsel, and maybe setting those parameters with regards to what can be charged, and probably falling within, the amounts that they can afford. Not to say that now that they got in-house legal counsel, that there shouldn't be any coordination with the Office of Attorney General, but when we start to look at when it is determined that the Office of Attorney Generals can't do this, and they have to start to go out and on an RFP, is this cost now going to be more than what they can afford, and are we going to get stuck? Are we going to get one step forward, three steps back? So, and I'd like to pose that question to the author, if the author could yield to the question.
Yes. Senator Palacios, would you like to yield to Senator Frank Blas? Please proceed.
Yes, thank you very much. Again, my understanding is that there's no additional cost here. I'm sure that they're going to look into lapse funds here. Perhaps there's a position there that has been lapsing due to freezes in the positions, and that's where I would think that they would find the money. And according to, if that's the only available funding source, and then I would think that it's not going to be much. I would think that the need for this one here is probably on a case-by-case basis, on a particular case, that they maybe they want to retain the legal services for an expertise for a particular issue at the time. But just to hire in-house, and not, I don't think that they have that kind of money at this time, and I don't think that that's really the intent of this. But this is more or less on a case-by-case. Again, the linkage with the AG still remain there. They can still use the AG, but if the AG say, well, we don't have that expertise, they go ahead and hire, then this will provide that authority to do that. That's the best that I can explain this.
Okay.
Senator Frank Blas.
I thank the author for yielding to this. I think it just reaffirms the concern that I've got. The director herself stated that she does not have the money within her budget to be able to pay the $105,000 asked by the Attorney General. If she doesn't have that money to be able to already satisfy already a requisite requirement with the agency that has already been tasked to assist her in the legal matters, where now are we going to find where, and granted she'll have the authority, and they'll have the authority to be able to, within their budget, to be able to move money to get money to be able to pay outside legal counsel. Well, why didn't you just use that same money to pay the $105,000 for the Attorney General to begin with? Or, look into, again, the practice of hiring an in-house legal counsel, and, much cheaper than that, still have the collaboration, because, Madam Chair, I recognize with regards to, and I don't take it away from the Office of Attorney General, that, they would like to have a little bit more so they can task an attorney or have an attorney work on the case full time. But if there's a collaboration, the Office of Attorney General already has that responsibility. We've already budgeted the Office of Attorney General to be able to take on some of this responsibility. So, I see the need, I see the concern, I see the intent that this legislation proposes. My issue here is with regards to just based on the testimony provided by the director. If we can't pay the $105,000 already that's owed to the Attorney General for work that they're already doing, where are we going to find the money to be able? Where are they going to be able to find the money to be able to pay for outside legal services? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator Blas. Are there anyone else wishing to speak on the motion? If not, Senator Palacios, you can close on the motion. We're going to take a brief recess.
The legislature is back in session. There is, my understanding, there's considerable discussion and amendment that needs to be proffered. So we're going to recess for lunch, and we'll resume at 2 p.m. this afternoon.